Hello, Eric. Yeah, this is Leonard. Yeah, I think you should be able to start. If that's okay with Daniel and Rebecca.
Yes, sir. I think we're ready to go.
With me?
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric Chatham with Civitas Consulting. We are a consulting firm hired by the town of Somerville to assist with their 2020-2024 consolidated plan and 2020 annual action plan. This evening's public hearing will review the process the town took to develop that plan, as well as the priorities, goals, and funding recommendations for the 2020 program year. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. And so I ask that all attendees mute their phones for the moment, and we'll be able to answer any questions or take comments at the end. So first, what is the consolidated plan? Well, the consolidated plan is a 5-year plan required by HUD as a contingency or a stipulation for the town receiving the Community Development Block Grant Program. So every 5 years, HUD says to the town, essentially take a pause in your CDBG programs, take a look at the needs of the community and the needs of the town and the residents and businesses, and reestablish or reconfirm the priorities for how those funds will be dispersed over the next 5 years. And then each year under that 5-year period, the town develops what the HUD refers to as an annual action plan. And in that annual action plan, we allocate funding to specific projects which address the priorities and goals as identified in the 5-year consolidated plan. So this evening, I'm going to share with you just some of the highlights from the consolidated plan, as well as the funding recommendations for the 2020 annual action plan. So the consolidated plan has 5 major components: a needs assessment, which looks at the needs of the residents of the town; the housing market analysis, as it sounds, is a review of housing stock within the town of Somerville; our 5-year strategic plan, which again identifies priorities and goals; the annual action plan; and then finally, and equally important, the citizen participation. So this plan has been available for a public comment period that ends tonight at the completion of our public hearing. And the document has been available for review on the town's website. Earlier on in the process, we also conducted a stakeholder and public survey and consulted with other town departments, key partner agencies, and elected officials to gather their feedback on the priorities and the proposed goals for the upcoming period. For the 2020 program year, this town has received $283,218 in community development block grant funding. They're also reallocating just under $93,000 of prior year funds that were being reallocated. Additionally, the town has received a special allocation through the CARES Act, which was passed back in March by Congress and the President. And the CARES Act allocated a one-time special allocation of $448,337 in additional CDBG funds. We did not anticipate those funds each year, so that's why those are in red. That's a one-time allocation. There may be additional allocations depending on how Congress and the President work out potentially additional stimulus. But for right now, these are our allocations that we're working with for the 2020 program year. So for those of you that may not be familiar with the Community Development Block Grant Program, these funds provided by HUD annually to the town have pretty wide range of eligible uses, and you see listed here. Some of the uses that the town often utilizes, if you will. They use typically funding is used for public improvements like streets and sidewalks, park, community centers, and public infrastructure like water and sewer facilities. Also, the city has, or the town rather, has from time to time invested in homeless shelters, temporary housing, and supportive services for individuals and families that might be experiencing homelessness. Funding, as you see on the right-hand column here, can also be used for economic development activities to assist small businesses. And a large portion of the funding each year is allocated for public services, which are typically provided or delivered by nonprofit partners in the community to provide things like healthcare programming, homeless services, literacy, youth services, senior services, etc. So a wide range of eligible social service activities. And again, those are typically administered by nonprofit partners. And then, of course, each year the city is able to take, and forgive me, I keep saying city, but the town is able to take up to 20% of the allocation for planning and administration cost related to staffing and planning efforts related to the program management. So specifically for our CARES Act funding, the CARES Act funding is primarily follows the CDBG rules. However, it also comes with a stipulation that the funds must be used, as you see here at the top, to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the impacts of COVID-19. And so you see a little bit of details here for the CARES Act. There was actually multiple rounds of funding. And at this point, the town has received 2 rounds of funding. They were all authorized under the same legislation, but round 1 was 166,000 and change, and round 3 was 281,000 in change. And again, at this point, there are no additional authorizations, though Congress may pass an additional stimulus. So a little bit of the highlights from the needs assessment and the demographics of the town of Somerville. Top left table, you see, and those of you that live and work in Somerville know that the town is experiencing dramatic growth. So 26% increase in population from 2010 to 2018. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir there. You guys know what that it's growing rapidly. The number of households is also increased by 18% in that same time frame, from 15,500 to almost 18,500. Median incomes, thankfully, have also increased over that time frame. Unfortunately, for much of South Carolina, median incomes in that time frame have been stagnant. In some places have even declined in South Carolina. So that bodes well for the town of Somerville and its residents, that median incomes have risen by 8% over that time period. Unfortunately, with increased incomes and increased demand for housing, you see that housing costs have also increased. That being said, a 6% increase in median home value, that doesn't exactly translate to the price of a new home today. Certainly, sales prices for new homes in the town of Somerville are higher, but this is just an aggregate or an average value of all the homes existing and recently built in Somerville. But you do see a trend on all home values increasing, and certainly new construction is dramatically higher. And naturally, there with that demand for housing as well, there's been a pretty significant increase in the median rent. In monthly rent has gone up almost 25% over this time period. And I will take a quick pause to say, many of you might be asking, well, why are we showing 2018 data? We're at the end of 2020 at this point. This is actually the most recent available census information. It comes from the American Community Survey, which is a part of the census. They'll be releasing the 2019 data actually later this month. So naturally, it takes them a little while to release the data. So this is, statistically speaking, the most recent and available data for these data points. Perhaps the most telling thing for low to moderate income households in the town of Somerville, and this is quite common, certainly here in the Charleston metro area, but across the country. You notice in the bottom left, almost 56% of renters pay more than 30% of their income towards housing. And HUD says that those households are then cost burden. So that's a pretty telling fact that more than half of all renters essentially can't afford the rent for the house that they're in. And likewise, almost a third of all homeowners with a mortgage are also cost burden. So those households that are cost burden typically have less discretionary income, and that has an impact on our local economy and their ability, in these cases, certainly relevant with the impacts of COVID-19. Cost burden households are less able to respond when there's economic crisis like we're facing today. And then the big map on the right-hand side, the darker shaded purple areas indicate a large growth in population between 2000 and then 2018. We used this map to take out a little bit of the anomaly from the housing crisis in the 2008-2010 timeframe. But you can see on the outsides, in all directions, the town has expanded over the last 18 to 20 years. And just quickly here, the Community Development Block Grant Program is primarily geared towards or set up to assist households that are considered low to moderate income. And you see on the left-hand side of your screen, low to moderate income means 80% of the household earns up to 80% of the area median income. And the median income is actually for the entire Charleston metro area. So it's not just the town itself, but the median income being utilized for Somerville is $59,306. And so therefore a household, HUD does adjust by household size, but for conversation here today, LMI is essentially less than $47,445 a year. Again, it's a little higher for larger households, a little lower for smaller households. What is great news for Somerville, in the top left, you see the poverty rate. Poverty rates have not increased in Somerville the way they have in other parts of Charleston. I live over in Mount Pleasant, but the city of Charleston has a close to 20% poverty rate. North Charleston is nearly 25% poverty rate. So Somerville is below the state average and certainly below the regional average, which is good news. So based on all of our findings and the public feedback and stakeholder feedback, the town has established 4 priorities, and those are on the left-hand side of your screen, as well as 6 goals associated with addressing those priorities. And so the first priority is to expand and improve public facilities and infrastructure, and then 2 related goals more specific for infrastructure and facilities. Then priority to provide public services and quality of life improvements. So we have 2 goals here: supportive services for special needs population. Again, that includes homeless, elderly, disabled adults, persons with substance abuse issues, etc. And then vital services for low to moderate income households. Naturally, as a program is funded by HUD, fair housing promotion is always going to be a priority of those programs. And so the town will always continue in everything they do with HUD funding to promote fair housing for all residents of Somerville. And finally, preserve and develop affordable housing. As we pointed out in the slides, this is one of the greatest needs for our region and certainly the town as it continues to expand. And so the town does use some of the funding each year to provide for owner-occupied housing rehab. As we mentioned, almost 30% of the owner-occupied households are cost burdened, which means those households are often struggle to make needed repairs like roof replacements or HVAC improvements, et cetera. So the town does utilize some of the funding each year to assist low-income homeowners with necessary repairs. For the 2020 annual action plan, here are the recommendations for project funding. So as I mentioned, the town can take up to 20% for administration. However, town is utilizing just 40,000. For public infrastructure is the largest allocation, as you can see in the annual allocation, the funds you see in black text, followed by public services, and then working with Habitat for Humanity for various housing programs for 35,000. The CARES Act funding, the special allocation, and the city will allocate that 20% for administration, and then the bulk of those funds will be utilized for needed public services. Right now, the town is exploring a number of potential public services utilizing the CARES Act funding, which might include rental assistance, utility assistance, social services, again, for those that might be facing eviction or potentially even homelessness. So the town is still vetting potential specific funding allocations out of that public services project. So our next steps, again, as I mentioned, we are currently in the public comment period that ends, well, really officially ends tonight at the culmination of this public hearing. And then we will be, with town approval and council approval, we will be submitting to HUD. And once HUD approves our plan, we'll be able to deploy these resources to serve the residents of the community. And with that, I'll be happy to, I'll stop the screen share and be happy to answer any questions or hear any feedback that we might have from the public. And so for attendees, if you are interested, see, we just have 2 attendees from the public. If you'd like to, if you are online, you can use the chat feature to type a question, or feel free to use the icons at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, and we can take you off mute so you can state your comment or your question. So I'll give you just a few minutes to give that a shot if you're interested. We do have one with the question or comment. Let's see. And I think we might need Leo there to take Mr. Joseph. It looks like he has his hand up. Joseph, could you?
Joseph should be able to speak now.
Okay, go ahead, Joseph.
Okay, yeah. The only comment is I really appreciate the town and the community block grant support for homeless in the area of Somerville, and thank you for all the work you do. I can't imagine the work that's gone into putting this thing together with just a few of the grants that we do here, but we've appreciated your support in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that comment. In hearing no further comments and seeing no questions or comments in the chat, town staff, I'll turn it back over to you, but I believe we are able to close out the public hearing.
Hello, Rebecca, are you on the line? Or Daniel?
Here.
Okay, whatever.
Yep, I'm here as well. I'm sorry, what was that?
Leo, yes, they are both on the line, and Daniel and Rebecca, if you have no objections, we will conclude the public hearing.
I have none.
Thank
Daniel,
you.
are you good?
I'm good. I think we're good.
Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a nice evening.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you.